Daring in the Desert, Chapter 25. 2 years later, Lilias had an adventure. She had traveled many thousands of miles over Algeria on many different kinds of transport. "Guess some of the ways I've traveled around your wonderful country," she asked a group of children in El Oued. She was thrilled to be back there. "Train!" yelled one little boy. "Camel!" said another. "I think you sometimes went by bus, right?" asked an older girl. "And I suppose you've gone by donkey, too." Lilias said that they were all right. And then she went on to tell them about the van that had been made for a lion tamer and his lion. The children sat with their mouths wide open. "And today I'm going on a new and exciting vehicle," she said. "Can you guess what it is?" Because citroons traveled regularly to El Oued, the children were able to guess. And that day, Lilias climbed on her first citroon. Later, back home in Dar Naama, she told her friends about it. "They are amazing," she said, her eyes lighting up at the memory. "Citroons are like small tanks with caterpillar-like tracks, and they go up and over desert sand dunes very easily. In fact, the journey from Tugur to El Oued took 4 days on a camel when I first went there. It only takes 10 hours in a citroon." Some of the younger missionaries smiled at each other at the thought of the elderly Lilias racing up and down sand dunes in a small tank. Lilias Trotter had to go on an even longer journey when she went back to England in 1924. On her return, she was in poor health, and her friend Helen insisted on calling out a doctor. "You are exhausted, and your heart is not good," she was told. "You must stay in bed and have quiet days now." The doctor probably meant for Lilias to stay in bed and do nothing, but that wasn't her style at all. She did stay in bed, because she was too weak to do anything else. But I want you to imagine her bed. There were books on it for her to read. To one side were sheets of paper with names on them, names of people she wanted to remember in her prayers. On the other side was a folder of papers all about the work of the Algiers Mission Band, plans to be made, work to be discussed, that kind of thing. Then there was her paint box and brushes on a little table beside her, and several sheets already painted. "What's that?" Helen was asked several months later. "It's a book Lilias has written when she was meant to be resting in bed." "What is it?" Helen turned the pages slowly to let her friend see the absolute beauty that she held in her hands. "It's a book of paintings of Algeria," she said. "It's called Between the Desert and the Sea." The two women sat down and paged through the book slowly. "It is perfectly beautiful," smiled Helen. "And every brushstroke has been done with love." Now that Lilias Trotter was too weak to go and visit people, they came to see her. Even Ali and Amar and their new families came all the way from Tuzur. After they went away, she wrote about their visit in a journal. "When someone is ill, they crowd into the room and sit and look at the patient. Sometimes, if the patient is very ill, they start the death wail. They just don't understand that sometimes ill people need to be alone and quiet." Ali and Amar's wives just stood and looked kindly at me. Then they hugged me. I could see tears in their eyes. "Then came Ali," she wrote, "who smiles joyfully over everything." Amar stood at the door, not quite sure what to do. He couldn't find words to say. But he did give me a lovely leather pouch decorated in Algerian embroidery before he left. Lilias was very short of breath, probably because of her heart condition. For the rest of her life, she often found it difficult to speak and only said a few words at a time. Despite that, she wrote one last book as she sat propped up in her bed at Dar Naama. Lilias Trotter hadn't any thought of retiring. Lilias was no longer able to be out of bed, apart from those times she needed to be helped to the chair in order for her sheets to be changed. But all this didn't stop Lilias from praying. In fact, prayer became the work of the last months of her life. And she was thrilled when an Arab man she'd been praying for became a Christian. As Lilias became weaker and weaker, God did a beautiful thing. Do you remember Francis and Reba Brading, the early Algiers missionaries who had to go home because the doctor said their children would not survive the heat? Well, by the time Lilias was in bed all the time, one of the Brading's daughters was a missionary with the Algiers mission band. It was her job to nurse Lilias. Not only that, but her mother Reba went out to visit them. Lilias told her old friend Reba, "Your little girl has crept into a special place of my heart." And so it was that on the 27th of August, 1928, surrounded by the people she loved, Lilias Trotter lay in bed. Helen Freeman, who had gone to Algeria with her, was there, and Lilias told her old friend that she could see many beautiful things. Lilias, you see, was about to leave earth and go to heaven. And nothing could be more beautiful than going there and seeing Jesus face to face. By then, the 30 missionaries serving God with the Algiers Mission Band were working in 15 different parts of Algeria. Today, the band is part of Arab World Ministries, which still reaches out to Arab people in Algeria and many other countries too, telling them about the Lord Jesus Christ.